Laura Lindsay thought she'd married a successful international businessman. Doohyun Lee had money, charm, and a British accent that made her mother swoon at their Los Angeles wedding. For 3 years, she believed the late nights were board meetings, the international trips were for business, and the separate bank accounts were about maintaining independence. Then a homeless woman died outside Laura's gym, clutching a photograph. Doohyun in a wedding tuxedo, kissing a woman who wasn't Laura. The woman's dying words to the paramedic. Tell wife number 3 he has 4 families now. Laura was wife number 2. By the time she found wives 1, 3, and 4, a corporate lawyer in Seoul, a restaurateur in Vancouver, and a gallery owner in San Francisco, she'd uncovered something worse than infidelity. Her husband wasn't just a bigamist. He was the youngest son of the Lee crime family, using each wife as an unwitting front for money laundering, drug trafficking, and human smuggling operations across 3 continents. The women he'd married weren't partners. They were infrastructure. And when Laura convinced the other wives to stop playing their assigned roles and start comparing notes, Doohyun Lee's carefully constructed empire began collapsing from the inside. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a criminal organization run by a man whose 4 wives just declared war. Now, before you assume this is just another revenge story where the wronged wife gets even, let me stop you right there. What Laura and the other wives discover isn't just that they've been lied to. It's that they've been committing federal crimes without knowing it. Their businesses, money laundering fronts, their investments, drug cartel payments, their beautiful homes, purchased with blood money. So the question isn't whether they take him down. The question is whether they can do it without going to prison themselves. Hit subscribe, because what happens when 4 intelligent women decide to dismantle a criminal empire while staying one step ahead of the FBI is the kind of chaos you can't look away from. Laura Lindsay was reviewing vendor contracts for a corporate gala when her phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in March. Unknown number, New York area code. She almost declined. Telemarketers had gotten aggressive lately, calling from rotating numbers to bypass her blocks. But something made her answer. Maybe it was the way the sun was hitting her home office window, casting everything in gold light that made the world feel briefly safe. Maybe it was just instinct. Mrs. Lee? Laura Lindsay Lee. The voice was female, professional, with an undertone of carefully practiced compassion. Yes, who's calling? This is paramedic Sarah Reyes with the LA County Fire Department. I'm calling about a woman who passed away this morning outside Westwood Athletic Club. She was carrying a photograph we believe connects to your family. Laura's first thought was that something had happened to Doohyun's mother in Korea. He'd mentioned she was elderly, in poor health. Is this about my mother-in-law? Is she okay? No, ma'am. I'm sorry, I should have been more clear. The deceased was a homeless woman, identity currently unknown. She was carrying a wedding photograph of a man we've identified as Doohyun Lee. We're trying to locate family members who might know who she was or why she had this photograph. Laura's brain stuttered, trying to process. A homeless woman, with a photograph of Doohyun. A wedding photograph? From our wedding. There was a pause. Professional, careful. Ma'am, based on the clothing and setting, the photograph appears to be from approximately 2015. The bride is wearing traditional Korean hanbok. Would you be able to come to the coroner's office to identify the photograph and possibly the deceased? 3 years before Laura married Doohyun in 2018. Laura's hand tightened on her phone. There must be a mistake. My husband and I were married in June of 2018. He wasn't married in 2015. Another pause, longer this time. Ma'am, the photograph is clearly labeled with names and a date. Would you be willing to view it? It might help us identify the deceased, and I understand this is confusing, but send me a picture of the photograph. Laura's voice came out harder than she intended. Send it to this number. Right now. I'm not sure that's protocol. I don't care about protocol. You called me about a dead woman who was carrying a photo of my husband at a wedding that supposedly happened 3 years before we got married. Send me the picture. Yes, ma'am. One moment. Laura sat frozen in her home office. The office Doohyun had insisted she set up when she'd started her event planning business. Said it was important to look professional, had paid for the furniture and the computer, and the high-speed internet she needed. The office where she'd spent 3 years building what she thought was a successful business with her supportive husband's encouragement. Her phone buzzed. Image received. Laura opened it with trembling fingers. The photograph was old style, the kind people still printed and framed before everything became digital. It showed Diyun in a classic black tuxedo, younger but unmistakably him. The same sharp jawline, the same careful way he held his shoulders, the same half-smile he gave when he was trying to look humble but felt proud. He was kissing a beautiful Korean woman in an elaborate traditional wedding hanbok, deep red silk with gold embroidery. Behind them hung a banner in Korean and English. Diyun and Jeannie, forever begins today, May 14th, 2015. Laura stared at the image until her eyes burned. Zoomed in on Diyun's face. On the way he was looking at this woman. This Jeannie, with an expression Laura recognized because he'd looked at her the same way on their wedding day. Like she was precious. Like she was his future. Like she was the only woman in the world. She called the paramedic back. Where did you find this woman? Outside Westwood Athletic Club on Wilshire. She collapsed around 6:30 this morning. Witness called 911. We arrived within 4 minutes, but she was already in cardiac arrest. We couldn't revive her. Did she say anything? Before she died. The witness, a woman who was arriving for an early morning workout class, said the deceased was trying to speak. She was clutching the photograph and saying something about wife number 3 and 4 families. The witness didn't understand what it meant. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee. I know this must be very confusing and upsetting. Wife number 3. For families. Laura felt the room tilt. She gripped the edge of her desk to stay upright. What happened to the photograph? The original. It's with the deceased's personal effects at the coroner's office. There wasn't much, just the photograph, the clothes she was wearing, and a small piece of paper with some writing in Korean. We're still trying to identify her. I need to see everything. Where's the coroner's office? 1104 North Mission Road. But Mrs. Lee, you don't need to come in person. We can email you additional photographs of the items, and if you can help identify. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Laura hung up before the paramedic could object. She sat motionless for a full minute, staring at the photograph on her phone. Then she did what any modern woman would do when confronted with evidence that didn't make sense. She reverse image searched it. 3 results appeared. The first was a wedding announcement in a Korean-American community newspaper from May 2015. The text was partially in Korean, but the English portion read, Diyun Lee, son of Daeyoung Lee of Seoul, and Jinae Park, daughter of Sunoke Park of San Francisco, were united in marriage on May 14, 2015, at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. The couple will reside in San Francisco, where the groom manages international business interests and the bride owns Lunar Gallery in the Mission District. The second result was a blog post from 2016 about San Francisco's rising art scene, featuring a photograph of Jinae Park standing in front of her gallery. The caption mentioned she was recently married to businessman Diyun Lee, and that his investment had helped transform the gallery into one of the city's premier contemporary art spaces. The third result was a society page mention from a San Francisco charity gala in 2017. Prominent businessman Diyun Lee and his wife Jinae Park Lee made a generous donation to the Asian Art Museum's expansion fund. His wife, Jinae Park Lee. Laura's hands were shaking so badly she had to set the phone down. She tried to find innocent explanations. Maybe Diyun had been married before and never mentioned it, though that seemed like something you'd tell your current wife. Maybe this was some kind of cultural ceremony she didn't understand. Maybe Jinae was a relative and wife was a translation error. But the way he was looking at her in that photograph, that wasn't how you looked at a relative or a friend. That was how you looked at someone you'd just promised forever to. Laura clicked through to the Lunar Gallery website. It was professional, sleek, showcasing contemporary Korean and Korean-American artists. The About page featured a photograph of Jinae, stunning, sophisticated, maybe late 30s, and a bio that mentioned her degree in art history from. He told me the same thing. Jinae's voice was hollow. About his family. That they were too traditional to attend an American wedding. That he'd take me to Korea to meet them properly when the timing was right. Did he ever take you? No. Always some excuse. His father's health, business complications, family obligations. I stopped asking after the first year. Jin-ae paused. Where are you right now? Los Angeles. Brentwood. In the home office of the house I live in with Diyun. Does he live there full time? No. He travels frequently. Import-export business, he says. International clients. Meetings in different cities. He's usually home 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes less. Laura felt sick saying it out loud. I thought it was normal. Successful businessmen travel. I travel too, for my event planning business. We made it work. I see him maybe 5 days a week, Jin-ae said quietly. He has a condo in San Francisco. Says he needs to be close to West Coast operations. I thought the LA trips were for business meetings. Just business. Laura did the math in her head. Diyun was with her in LA 3 to 4 days a week. With Jin-ae in San Francisco 5 days a week. That was more than 7 days. Which meant, there are more of us, Laura whispered. The homeless woman said, wife number 3. If you're number 2 and I'm number 1, then yes. There are more. Laura heard typing in the background. What are you doing? Searching public records. Marriage licenses. Property records. If he's done this to us, he's done it to others. And if there's paperwork, I'll find it. Jin-ae's voice had shifted from shocked to coldly analytical. What's your full legal name and date of birth? Laura provided them. Heard more typing. You're listed as co-owner of a property in Brentwood. Purchased in 2018. And you have a business license for Lindsay Events, filed the same year. The business address is the same as your residential address. Yes. Diyun said it was important for tax purposes to keep business and personal finances separate. He helped me set everything up. Said I needed proper infrastructure if I wanted corporate clients to take me seriously. More typing. I'm co-owner of a condo in San Francisco, purchased in 2016. And the gallery is registered as a partnership, me and Diyun. He provided the initial capital investment, helped me expand. I thought he was being supportive. Her voice broke for the first time. God, I thought I was so lucky that I'd found someone who believed in me. He made me feel the same way. Laura felt tears threatening. He encouraged my business, helped me get clients, celebrated every success like it was his success too. I thought we were building a life together. We were building infrastructure for him. Different cities, different assets, different identities, different women who'd vouch for him being a legitimate businessman. Jin-ae's voice hardened. This isn't just bigamy. This is organized, intentional. And if he's compartmentalized his life this thoroughly, there's a reason. And that reason is probably illegal. Laura thought about Diyun's vague explanations about his business. Import-export, he'd said. Textiles and electronics, and wholesale markets. Clients who preferred to work in cash. Investments that needed to be flexible for tax purposes. She'd never questioned it because she didn't understand international business, and he'd always been patient explaining things in ways that sounded reasonable. But now, with Jin-ae's lawyer-trained skepticism cutting through the fog, Laura started seeing patterns she'd ignored. The corporate clients who paid her event planning business in cash. Tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes, for events that barely cost half that to execute. The vendors Diyun had recommended who'd invoice one amount and accept half that in person, pocketing the difference. The separate bank account he'd insisted she set up for business purposes, where large deposits would appear with vague notes like consulting fee or event proceeds. Oh God, Laura whispered. I think he's been using my business to launder money. And he's probably using my gallery the same way. Jin-ae's typing became more frantic. High-value art purchases that can be bought and sold without much scrutiny. International buyers. Cash transactions. It's perfect for moving dirty money. What do? First, we verify this. We figure out how many of us there are. We gather evidence. We find out exactly what he's been doing. Jin-ae paused. And then we decide whether we go to the police, or whether that makes us accomplices instead of victims. We're victims. We didn't know. The law doesn't always care what we knew. If we've been profiting from criminal activity, even unknowingly, we're potentially culpable. I'm a lawyer, Laura. I know how this works. We need to be very, very careful about how we handle this. Laura felt panic rising. I need to see you. In person. I need to see the woman who married my husband 3 years before I did. I need this to be real. I'm getting on a plane. Tonight. I'll be in LA by 9 p.m. Don't call Du Yun. Don't tell him we've spoken. Don't change anything about your routine. We need to figure out how deep this goes before he realizes we're comparing notes. Where is he now? Do you know? He texted me this morning that he was flying to Vancouver for a 2-day business meeting. Said he'd be back Friday. Vancouver. Laura felt her stomach drop. He told me he was going to Seoul. For a week. Said he was visiting his parents. The implications hung between them. Du Yun wasn't in Seoul or Vancouver. Or if he was in Vancouver, he'd lied to Laura about Seoul. Or he'd lied to Jin-ae about Vancouver and was actually in Seoul. Or, there's someone in Vancouver, Laura said. Wife number 3. And probably someone in Seoul too, Jin-ae confirmed. Wife number 1. If the homeless woman was counting chronologically, who was she? The homeless woman. I don't know, but she died trying to warn us. And she knew about all 4 wives. Which means she was connected to Du Yun somehow. Close enough to know his secrets. Jin-ae's voice went quiet. We owe her. We owe it to her to figure out who she was and why she tried to save us. After Jin-ae hung up with promises to call when she landed, Laura sat motionless in her office, staring at her computer screen. 3 years of business records. 3 years of income she'd thought she'd earned through hard work and talent. 3 years of building what she believed was a successful event planning company with her husband's support. She opened her business banking, scrolled through transactions with new eyes. Large cash deposits, always under $10,000. She'd never questioned why clients paid that way. Du Yun had explained that many international businesses preferred cash, something about tax advantages she didn't fully understand. Wire transfers from companies she'd never heard of, payment for consulting services she didn't remember providing, vendor payments that didn't match her actual costs. She'd invoice a client $30,000 for an event that cost $15,000 to produce, pocket the $15,000 difference as profit, and think she was just good at negotiations. But what if the clients weren't real? What if the vendors were in on it? What if every dollar she'd made for 3 years was actually criminal proceeds she'd been laundering without knowing it? Laura pulled up her email, searched for Du Yun's name, found hundreds of messages over 3 years. Read them with new suspicion. The client I referred to will pay cash. Try not to deposit more than $9,000 at once. It keeps things simpler for tax reporting. Use the vendors I recommended. They understand how international businesses work and won't ask unnecessary questions. Keep your business and personal finances completely separate. It's cleaner that way. Every piece of advice, every helpful suggestion, every way he'd supported her business. He'd been setting up infrastructure, building a system. Using her, Laura searched her browser history, found articles about money laundering, structuring, smuffing, using legitimate businesses to clean proceeds from illegal activities. The patterns matched. Deposits kept under reporting thresholds. Vendors who accepted cash and provided inflated invoices. A business that looked legitimate on paper but existed primarily to process money from unknown sources. She'd been running a money laundering operation for 3 years without knowing it. And if the FBI ever investigated, her ignorance might not protect her. When the doorbell rang at 9:43 p.m., Laura had been sitting in the dark for hours, surrounded by printouts of financial records and articles about organized crime. She'd driven to the coroner's office, identified the photograph, and been allowed to see the deceased's other personal effects. The small piece of paper the paramedic mentioned had turned out to be a list, written in shaky English with some Korean characters mixed in. Wife 1, Seoul, Haewon Textiles. Wife 2, Los Angeles, Laura Events. Wife 3, Vancouver, Sophia Restaurant. Wife 4, San Francisco, Jin-ae Gallery. Below that, in Korean, Laura had asked a bilingual coroner's assistant to translate. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Forgive me. Mother. Mother. The homeless woman had been someone's mother, and she died trying to warn 4 women she probably never met. Laura opened the door to find Ginny Park standing there with an overnight bag and an expression that mirrored Laura's own. Shock, grief, rage, and the desperate hope that this was all somehow a misunderstanding. "Hi," Jinae said quietly. "I'm the woman your husband married in 2015. "Hi," Laura replied. "I'm the woman your husband married in 2018. They stared at each other for a moment, two strangers bound by betrayal, and then Jinae asked the question that would change everything. "Do you want to destroy him, or do you want to survive him?" Laura thought about the list, about the homeless woman who'd tried to warn them, about 3 years of unknowingly committing crimes, about a man who'd built an empire on lies and used 4 women as unwitting accomplices. "Both," she said. "I want to do both." "Jinae," he smiled grimly. "Good. Me too. Now let's find the others." They spread everything across Laura's dining table, the kind of scene that would look insane to an outside observer but made perfect sense to 2 women whose entire realities had shattered in the same day. Financial records, property deeds, business licenses, the photograph from the homeless woman, the list with 4 names. 3 years of Laura's life and 8 years of Jinae's, laid out in documents that proved they'd both been living lies. Jinae had brought her own evidence, printouts she'd made before leaving San Francisco, driven by the same instinct Laura had. Document everything before he realizes we know. Bank statements showing cash deposits that now looked suspicious. Gallery sales records with buyers who'd never picked up their purchases. Invoices from vendors who existed only on paper. "The gallery was struggling when we met," Jinae said, voice clinical in the way people get when emotions are too overwhelming to feel. "I was drowning in debt. 6 years of law school, and then working for big firms that paid well, but burned me out. I quit to pursue my dream, opening an art gallery. It was failing spectacularly. I was 3 months from bankruptcy when Duyun walked in." "What was his approach?" Laura asked. "Charming. Knowledgeable about Korean art, which impressed me. Said he was looking to invest in businesses that promoted Korean culture in America. We had coffee, then dinner. Then he was touring my books and pointing out inefficiencies and offering to become a silent partner." Jinae's laugh was bitter. "Within 6 months, we were profitable. Within a year, we were getting written up in art magazines. I thought he was a business genius who saw potential in me." "When did it shift from business to personal?" "Around month 8. He started staying late to help with inventory. We'd have wine after closing. He'd ask about my life, my family, why I'd left law. Made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt since law school. By month 9, we were dating. By month 11, he proposed. We got married 6 months later." Laura heard her own story in Jinae's. "He did the same thing to me. Showed up at an event I was coordinating. Said he was impressed by my attention to detail. We had coffee to discuss business opportunities. Then dinner. Then he was introducing me to high-end clients who needed event planning. I thought I'd finally found someone who supported my ambitions instead of competing with them." "When did you marry him?" "June 2018. 3 years after he married you. Which means for 3 years, he was married to both of us simultaneously." Laura felt the weight of it. How does someone maintain 2 complete lives? 2 wives who think they're the only wife. Compartmentalization. Different cities. Different social circles. Different narratives. Jinae pulled up a calendar on her laptop. "Let's map his schedule. You said he's with you 3 to 4 days a week. Usually Monday through Wednesday or Thursday. Sometimes he'd leave Thursday morning, sometimes not until Friday. He'd say he had client meetings in other cities, would be back the following Monday." Jinae nodded. "He's typically with me Friday through Tuesday. Says he has LA business meetings Wednesday and Thursday. Sometimes he'd stay through Wednesday evening, but usually he'd leave Tuesday night or Wednesday morning." Laura created a spreadsheet. "So roughly, Monday through Wednesday with me in LA, Thursday through Tuesday with you in San Francisco. That's 10 days in a 7-day week. Which means the other wives are filling gaps. Vancouver and Seoul." Jinae's fingers flew across her keyboard. The list said Sophia in Vancouver, restaurant. "Let me search for business licenses." 5 minutes of searching public records produced results. Sophia Chun, owner of Golden Phoenix Restaurant in Vancouver. Business established in 2019. Partnership structure showing a silent investor. A company registered in the Cayman Islands. Same pattern, Jinae muttered. Silent investment. Business that suddenly becomes profitable. I'll bet money that Cayman Company traces back to Du Yun. Can you find a phone number? Jean A. found the restaurant's website. Professional, showcasing upscale Chinese-Korean fusion cuisine. About page featured a photo of Sophia. Beautiful, late 30s, warm smile. And a bio mentioning her culinary degree from Vancouver Culinary Institute and her dream of creating a space that honored both her Chinese and Korean heritage. There was a phone number. Laura looked at the clock, 10:47 p.m. With the time difference, that was 1:47 a.m. in Vancouver. We wait until morning, Jean A. decided. We call during business hours. And we need a strategy. We can't just call and say hi. We're your husband's other wives. We need her to believe us quickly and completely. Show her the photograph, Laura suggested. And the list. The homeless woman wrote all our names. Sophia's name is there. Who was she? The homeless woman. Laura pulled out her phone, showed Jean A. the translation of the Korean text. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Forgive me. Mother. Mother. Jean A. breathed. She was someone's mother. Someone connected to Du Yun closely enough to know about all 4 wives. The coroner listed her as Suni Lee. Korean-born. Immigrated to the U.S. in 1987. Last known address was a women's shelter in L.A. from 2019 until about a month ago. Then she disappeared into the homeless population. Gina, it went very still. Lee is Du Yun's family name. I know. Suni Lee could be his mother. His actual mother. Laura had considered this. Had been trying not to consider this. He told me his mother lived in Seoul. That she was traditional, elderly, didn't speak English. That's why she couldn't attend our wedding. He told me the same thing. Word for word. Jean A.'s hands were shaking. If Suni was his mother, and she was homeless in Los Angeles while he was living in a $1 million condo in Brentwood, that means he abandoned her. Let his own mother become homeless while he was living a luxury life. Multiple luxury lives. What kind of man does that? Laura thought about the man she'd married. Charming, generous, attentive, always there for important moments, always supportive of her career, always making her feel like the most important person in his world when he was with her, and apparently doing the exact same thing with 3 other women while his mother died alone on the street. A sociopath, Laura said quietly, or someone so deep in criminal activity that even his own mother became a liability. Jean A. pulled up a new search. If he's using our businesses for money laundering, there has to be a source. Dirty money doesn't appear out of nowhere. It comes from drugs, gambling, prostitution, smuggling, something illegal generating cash that needs to be cleaned. Do you think he's in organized crime? I think a man capable of maintaining 4 separate marriages across 3 countries while building business fronts in each location is either incredibly sophisticated or has serious organizational backing. One person can't manage that level of compartmentalization alone. Laura thought about Du Yun's family in Seoul, how he'd always been vague about what his father did. Business interests, he'd said. Import-export. The same thing he'd told Laura about his own work. We need to find Hae-won, Laura said, looking at the list. Wife number 1 in Seoul. If she's been married to him the longest, she might know the most. Jean A. searched Korean business registries. Lee Textiles Seoul. CEO, Hae-won Lee. Looks like a legitimate import-export business. Medium-sized operation, established in 2010. 2 years before he married you. So he married the CEO of the business he claims to run. That's not suspicious at all. Jean A. found an email address for Lee Textiles' corporate office. She drafted a message, showed it to Laura. Subject: urgent. Your husband has 3 other wives. Ms. Hae-won Lee. My name is Jean A. Park. I married Du Yun Lee in 2015 in San Francisco. I'm writing to inform you that I have discovered he has been simultaneously married to at least 3 other women. Myself in San Francisco, Laura Lindsay in Los Angeles, and Sophia Chun in Vancouver. A homeless woman named Suni Lee died yesterday in Los Angeles carrying a list with all our names. She wrote, I'm sorry I couldn't save you in Korean. We need to talk. This is not a joke. Jean A. Laura read it. Direct. Clear. Verifiable. Send it. Jean A. hit send at 11:23 p.m. Los Angeles time. which made it 4:23 p.m. the next day in Seoul. The reply came 17 minutes later. I know. I've known for 2 years. We need to meet. Come to Seoul. All of you. This is bigger than infidelity. Hae-won. Laura and Jin-ae stared at the screen. She knew, Laura whispered. For 2 years she's known about us and didn't say anything. Jin-ae was already typing a response. Why didn't you warn us? The answer came quickly, because I was trying to figure out how to escape without being killed. Duyun isn't just a bigamist. He's part of an organized crime family. His father runs one of the largest Korean syndicates in East Asia. We're not victims of infidelity. We're infrastructure in a criminal empire. And if we move wrong, we're dead. The words hung on the screen. Laura felt the room tilt. We need to call Sophia. Tonight. Before we lose our nerve. At 2 a.m. Vancouver time, Jin-ae called Golden Phoenix Restaurant's emergency contact number. Sophia answered on the fourth ring, voice groggy. Golden Phoenix, we're closed. If this is an emergency. Ms. Chun, my name is Jin-ae Park. I'm calling from Los Angeles. I'm married to Duyun Lee. Pause. Long, terrible pause. So am I, Sophia said quietly. I know. There are 4 of us. Can you talk? 10 minutes later, they had Sophia on a video call. She sat in what looked like a small apartment above her restaurant, still in pajamas, eyes red from crying. How long? She asked. 8 years for me, Jin-ae said. 3 years, Laura added. 6 years. Sophia's voice broke. We met at a food industry expo in Vancouver. He was representing a supplier, he said. We talked about Korean fusion cuisine. He invested in my restaurant. Made it successful. I thought. She couldn't finish. We all thought the same thing, Laura said gently. That we were lucky. That we'd found someone special. I have financial records, Sophia said, pulling herself together. The restaurant does legitimate business, but there are these catering orders for corporate events that pay cash up front and then cancel at the last minute. I keep the deposits per policy. Duyun insisted on that policy. I thought it was smart business. But now, it's money laundering, Jin-ae finished. Using your restaurant to clean cash through fake orders that appear legitimate on your books. I have the same thing happening at my gallery. High-value art sales to buyers who never collect their purchases. Laura has it with her event planning. Clients who pay massive amounts for events that cost half that to produce. We're all running fronts, Laura said, unknowingly. But that won't matter to prosecutors if this gets investigated. Sophia looked sick. What do we do? Jin-ae pulled up the email from Hae-won. We go to Seoul. We meet wife number 1. She says she's been gathering evidence for 2 years. She knows things we don't. I can't just leave my restaurant. Can you trust anyone to run it for a week? My sous chef, but then we go? All 3 of us. We meet Hae-won. We figure out exactly what we're involved in. And then we decide how to get out of this without going to prison or getting killed. Laura thought about Suni Lee, dying on a Los Angeles sidewalk, clutching a photograph and a list of names. Thought about the words written in Korean. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. We go, Laura agreed. For Suni. For the woman who tried to warn us, even though it cost her everything. Sophia nodded slowly. When? Tomorrow night, Jin-ae decided. We all fly to Seoul. We meet Hae-won. And we start building our case. Case for what? Sophia asked. Jin-ae's expression was cold. Either a case that proves we're victims and gets us immunity from prosecution, or a case that destroys Duyun and his entire family before they can destroy us. Which one? Laura asked. Jin-ae smiled grimly. I'm a lawyer. I don't believe in our statements. We do both. Quick question. What's worse than discovering your husband has multiple wives? Discovering you've been unknowingly laundering money for a criminal organization and the FBI probably has a file with your name on it. Laura, Jin-ae, and Sophia are about to learn that being victims doesn't mean they're innocent, and that taking down Din Lee means confessing to crimes they didn't know they were committing. But here's the thing about smart women who've been played. They don't just want revenge. They want immunity. Stay tuned. This gets complicated. Click subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from. Seoul in March was colder than Laura expected. She'd packed for a quick trip, 3 days maximum, but standing outside Incheon Airport at 6 a.m. waiting for Hae-won's driver, She realized she hadn't packed for the emotional climate. Jeannie stood beside her wearing a long coat and the expression of someone preparing for battle. Sophia had arrived on a different flight and was somewhere inside still clearing customs. How do we know we can trust her? Laura asked quietly. Hey one. She knew about us for 2 years and said nothing. We don't trust her. We verify everything she tells us. But she has evidence we need, and we have information she needs. For now, that's enough. Jeannie checked her phone. The driver should be here in 5 minutes. Did you tell anyone where you're going? My gallery manager thinks I'm at an art fair in Hong Kong. My assistant thinks I'm scouting venues in Singapore. Laura pulled her coat tighter. How long do we have before Dune realizes we're all gone at the same time? He thinks I'm in San Francisco running my gallery. He thinks you're in LA planning events. He thinks Sophie is in Vancouver running her restaurant. As long as our businesses appear operational, we should have a few days before he gets suspicious. A black Mercedes pulled up. The driver, a Korean man in his 50s wearing a dark suit, stepped out and bowed slightly. Mrs. Parkley? Mrs. Lindsay Lee? I am Mr. Kim. Mrs. Lee sent me to collect you. The formality was jarring. They were all Mrs. Lee technically, all married to the same man. Sophia emerged from the terminal pulling a suitcase, looking exhausted and terrified. Jeannie made introductions while Mr. Kim loaded luggage. The drive into Seoul took 40 minutes. Mr. Kim said nothing beyond professional courtesies. Laura watched the city slide past, modern skyscrapers next to traditional architecture, a blend of old and new that felt appropriate for a trip where everything Laura thought she knew was colliding with terrible new reality. They arrived at a high-rise in Gangnam, Seoul's wealthiest district. Mr. Kim led them to a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Hae-won Lee was waiting in a living room that screamed quiet wealth. She was in her early 40s, beautiful in a polished way, wearing tailored pants and a silk blouse. When she stood to greet them, Laura saw the same careful composure Jeannie wore, the armor of women who'd spent years in professional environments that didn't tolerate weakness. Thank you for coming, Hae-won said in perfect English with a British accent. Please sit. We have a great deal to discuss. She'd prepared tea and coffee, laid out documents on a large dining table. The 3 visiting wives sat, and Hae-won took a breath before beginning. I discovered the others 2 years ago, she said without preamble. I found evidence of the San Francisco property while reviewing our joint financial records. I hired a private investigator. Within 3 months, I knew about Jeannie, Laura, and Sophia. I've been documenting everything since. Why didn't you contact us? Jeannie's voice was sharp. Because I was trying to figure out how to escape without being killed, Hae-won said flatly. Let me be very clear about what we're dealing with. Dooyeon Lee is not just a bigamist using us for money laundering. He is the youngest son of Lee Dae-young, who runs one of the largest organized crime syndicates in East Asia. His father controls drug trafficking routes from Southeast Asia through Korea to Western markets. His 2 older brothers handle enforcement and distribution. Dooyeon was sent to America 12 years ago to establish Western operations. The room went silent. Laura felt nauseous. Our businesses aren't just money laundering fronts, Hae-won continued. They're distribution infrastructure. Jeannie, your gallery in San Francisco, do you sign for shipping containers regularly? Yes. Art shipments from Korea, Japan, China. Weekly deliveries. Have you ever inspected the contents? Not all of them. My shipping manager handles intake. I trust my vendors. Hae-won pulled up photographs on her laptop. Lee Textiles imports fabric from manufacturing centers in Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam. Legitimate business that's operated for 20 years. But hidden in those fabric shipments are packages that have nothing to do with textiles. She showed pictures of vacuum-sealed packages hidden in fabric bolts. Bricks of drugs sewn into material. I started randomly inspecting containers 6 months ago. Every major shipment contains a product. The fabric goes to legitimate buyers. The drugs go to warehouses that our businesses have access to. Sophia looked like she might be sick. My restaurant receives supply shipments from a Korean food distributor. Weekly delivery of specialty ingredients. Are you saying? Check your storage areas. Check any spaces you have keys to but don't personally manage. I'd bet everything I own that you're receiving more than food. Hey One turned to Laura. Your event planning business. Do you store equipment? Decorations? Supplies? I have a storage unit. Climate controlled. Duyun insisted on it, said I needed professional inventory management. Laura's hands were shaking. I've never fully inventoried it. I just add things when I buy them and retrieve them when I need them. You're probably storing product between distribution points. Your event business gives you legitimate reasons to move large items across the city, to have people loading and unloading trucks, to access warehouses and venues at odd hours. Perfect cover for distribution. Jesus Christ, Sophia whispered. We're not just laundering money. We're actively participating in drug trafficking. Unknowingly, Jean said quickly. We're victims here. We didn't know. The FBI won't care what we knew, Hay once said. They'll care that we profited, that we signed for shipments, that our businesses facilitated distribution. Ignorance isn't a defense against strict liability crimes. So what do? Laura asked. Run? Turn ourselves in? What? We do what I've been doing for 2 years. We gather evidence. We document everything. We build a case so comprehensive that when we approach federal prosecutors, we can trade testimony for immunity. Can we even get immunity? Sophia asked. Gina nodded slowly. If we can prove we were coerced, that Duyun systematically deceived us, manipulated us into participating in criminal activity, and that we're coming forward voluntarily with evidence, yes. The FBI makes deals with cooperative witnesses all the time. But we have to have something valuable to trade, Hay One added. We need proof of the conspiracy, evidence of Duyun's family structure, documentation of the crimes themselves, active, current criminal activity that the FBI can disrupt. She pulled up a file on her laptop. This is what I've gathered over 2 years. Shipping manifests, financial transfers, communication logs between Duyun and his brothers, photographs of drug packages, records of cash deliveries to our businesses. Laura stared at the screen. Hundreds of documents. Thousands of pages. How did you get all this without him knowing? I'm the CEO of Lee Textiles. I have access to everything. And I've been very careful. Every piece of evidence is backed up in 3 locations. Encrypted. Accessible only with passwords all 4 of us will have. Why include us in the passwords? Sophia asked. Because if something happens to me, the evidence doesn't die with me. It automatically releases to FBI, Korean National Police, and Interpol. Mutual protection. Hey One looked at each of them. We're in this together now. We protect each other or we all go down. When do we approach the FBI? Laura asked. Not yet. We need more. We need proof of active conspiracy that's happening right now, not just historical documents. We need something big enough that the FBI will give us full immunity instead of reduced charges. How do we get that? Hey One smiled coldly. Duyun's family holds an annual summit. All the brothers, key lieutenants, financial managers. They discuss expansion, distribution, finances, everything. It happens in 2 weeks, here in Seoul, at the family compound where I live. You live with his family? Laura couldn't hide her shock. I live in a separate wing. But yes, I'm expected to play the dutiful wife, manage the legitimate business, attend family functions. It's prison with better furniture. Can you record the summit? Jean leaned forward. I've already planted devices. State-of-the-art surveillance, hidden in smoke detectors, air vents, decorative objects. Everything transmits to a secure server. If we can record the family discussing their criminal enterprise, we'll have evidence even the best lawyers can't dismiss. That's incredibly dangerous, Sophia said. If they catch you. I'm already dead, Hay One said simply. Just slowly. Duyun's family doesn't let people leave. Eventually, all of us become liabilities. Look what happened to Suni. The name hung in the air. She was his mother, wasn't she? Laura asked quietly. Hay One's face crumpled for just a moment before she regained control. Yes, Duyun's biological mother. She was Dae-young's first wife. She came to America with the family in the 1980s when they were establishing U.S. operations. But she had moral objections to the business, threatened to go to authorities. So they made her disappear. How? Jin-ae's voice was hard. Took her money, her identity, Everything. Declared her mentally incompetent. Had her committed to a psychiatric facility, then released her with nothing. No family support. No resources. She ended up homeless. If she tried to tell anyone about the Lee family's crimes, who would believe her? A homeless woman with a history of psychiatric treatment making wild accusations about a wealthy, respectable Korean business family. That's why she had the list, Laura breathed. She'd been watching, trying to warn us before we ended up like her. She came to me 2 years ago, Hae-won said, voice thick with emotion. Showed up at Lee Textiles. Security almost threw her out, but she told me who she was. Showed me photographs from when she was married to Dae-young. Gave me a file she'd been compiling, documentation of the family's crimes. Names, addresses, everything. Did you help her? I gave her money. Promised to investigate. But I was terrified. If the family found out I'd talked to her. Hae-won shook her head. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd warn you. Said Dae-yoon would use you until you became liabilities, then discard you the same way. She was trying to save us, even though we were part of the family that destroyed her life. Silence settled over the room. For women who'd been strangers 3 days ago, bound by betrayal and a dead woman's warning. We record the summit, Jin-ae said. We gather evidence. We approach the FBI with immunity deals already drafted. And then we burn everything down. All of it, Laura agreed. For Suni, Sophia added. And for us, Hae-won finished. Because we deserve to live. Actually live, not just survive in cages we didn't know we were in. They spent the next 6 hours going through Hae-won's evidence, learning the scope of the Lee family's operation, understanding exactly how their businesses fit into a network that spanned 3 continents and generated hundreds of millions in drug money annually. By the time the sun set over Seoul, Laura had seen enough evidence to put Dae-yoon and his family away for life. She'd also seen enough to put herself in prison if she couldn't prove she'd been an unwitting participant. The summit is in 2 weeks, Hae-won said as the meeting wound down. Between now and then, we document everything we can. Every suspicious transaction, every cash delivery, every shipping container. We build an airtight case. And we prepare our immunity deals, Jin-ae added. I'll draft the initial proposals. We need to approach this like we're the prosecution's dream witnesses, not defendants trying to avoid charges. What do we tell Dae-yoon? Sophia asked. When he asks where we've been. The truth, Hae-won said. Just not all of it. You were in Seoul for business. For legitimate business. Laura, you were scouting venues for a corporate client considering a Seoul event. Jin-ae, you were meeting with Korean artists for the gallery. Sophia, you were touring Korean restaurants for menu inspiration. We all have paper trails to support those stories. He won't question it because he thinks we're compartmentalized. He thinks we don't know about each other. But we do now, Laura said. We know everything. Not everything, Hae-won corrected, but enough to destroy him. The question is whether we're brave enough to do it. Laura thought about Suni Lee, dying alone after years of trying to warn women she'd never met. Thought about 3 years of being an unknowing criminal. Thought about Dae-yoon's face when he'd married her, looking at her the same way he'd looked at 3 other women. I'm brave enough, she said. The other 3 wives nodded agreement. And in that Seoul penthouse, overlooking a city that contained the family compound where Dae-yoon's father planned criminal operations, for women who'd been played as pawns began moving like queens. Here's what Dae-yoon Lee doesn't know. The 4 women he thought were isolated, controllable, and dependent just formed an alliance that's about to become his worst nightmare. Because individually, they're victims. Together, they're the infrastructure of his empire, and infrastructure can be weaponized. What happens when the people you've been using decide to stop cooperating and start collecting evidence? Hit the subscribe button and stick around. The revenge doesn't start with explosions. It starts with spreadsheets. And sometimes spreadsheets are more dangerous. For 2 weeks, the 4 wives played their roles perfectly. Laura smiled when Dae-yoon called from business meetings. Jin-ae hosted gallery events and chatted warmly when he visited San Francisco. Sophia ran her restaurant and texted him photos of new menu items she was excited to share. Hae-won managed Lee Textiles and attended family dinners at the compound, playing the dutiful wife who knew her place. But behind the scenes, they were documenting everything. Laura started by systematically inventorying her storage unit. She went at 6 a.m. when the facility was nearly empty, photographing every box, every label, every item. In the back corner, behind equipment she recognized, were wooden crates she'd never seen before. They had shipping labels from Lee Textiles, Seoul, addressed to her business. She carefully pried one open. Inside, beneath a layer of decorative fabric, were vacuum-sealed packages. Laura didn't open them, didn't touch them beyond the photograph, but she knew what they were. Knew that her innocent storage unit was a distribution waypoint for drugs moving through Los Angeles. She documented everything with time-stamped photos, then carefully replaced the crate lid. That evening, she sent the evidence to Jean A.E.'s secure server. Jean A.E. conducted her own investigation at Lunar Gallery. She started randomly inspecting shipments from her Korean and Japanese art suppliers, using her authority as owner to demand to see contents before signing for delivery. In a crate supposedly containing ceramic sculptures from a Busan artist, she found packages identical to what Laura had discovered. In a shipment of contemporary paintings from Tokyo, more packages hidden in custom-built frames. She photographed everything, documented the shipping manifests, traced the vendors to shell companies she couldn't verify, and added it all to the growing evidence file. Sophia did the same at Golden Phoenix. She started taking inventory of her walk-in freezer and dry storage areas personally instead of trusting her staff. In the back of the freezer, behind legitimate food supplies, were boxes marked specialty ingredients that she'd never ordered. Inside, packages that definitely weren't food. She felt sick documenting it, felt complicit even though she was gathering evidence. But she photographed everything, cross-referenced the delivery manifests, and added her findings to the collective file. The evidence mounted. Laura had documented a corporate event client who paid $50,000 cash for a party that cost $20,000 to produce. The client had canceled last minute. In Purdue Union's policy, Laura kept the deposit as lost revenue. Except the client didn't exist. It was just money moving from dirty to clean through her legitimate business records. Jean A.E. captured video of art buyers who purchased expensive pieces, paid cash, and never collected their artwork. She'd thought they were eccentric collectors. Now she understood they were just conduits, buying art to move money, the physical product irrelevant. Sophia recorded catering consultations where clients described elaborate corporate events in detail, paid massive deposits in cash, then canceled. Her cancellation policy, Duyun's policy, meant she kept the money. Legitimate revenue on paper. Laundered drug money in reality. But it was Hae-won who uncovered the real scope. As CEO of Lee Textiles, she had access to everything. Shipping schedules, distribution networks, financial transfers, communication logs between Duyun and his brothers. She'd been documenting for 2 years, but now, knowing the other wives were gathering evidence too, she intensified her efforts. She pulled records showing the textile business's legitimate operations alongside its criminal enterprise. Fabric shipments that moved through standard channels. Drug shipments hidden in the same containers, delivered to warehouses owned by shell companies linked to the wives' businesses. Financial transfers showing hundreds of millions moving through a network of legitimate and criminal channels. Payments flowing from Colombian cartels through multiple banks, eventually landing in the wives' businesses as investment income or consulting fees. Communication logs between Duyun and his brothers discussing expansion, distribution, the businesses they'd built using 4 unwitting women. One message made Laura's blood run cold when Hae-won shared it during a secure video call. The wives are performing perfectly. Laura's event business has moved $2.3 million this quarter. Jean A.E.'s gallery can handle larger amounts. She moved $4.1 million without suspicion. Sophia's restaurant is useful for Vancouver distribution and cleaning local earnings. They're all compartmentalized. None suspect. We'll transition to new infrastructure when necessary. Transition to new infrastructure, Jean A.E. repeated. That's corporate speak for we'll get rid of them when they're no longer useful. Like they did with Suni, Sophia said quietly. Exactly like Suni, Hae-won confirmed. We're tools. When tools break or become liabilities, you replace them. Laura felt rage crystallizing into something colder and more useful. How do we use this? We have evidence of money laundering, drug trafficking, probably RICO violations. But we're implicated in all of it. We need the recordings from the family summit, Jean said. We need proof they coerced us. Proof we were systematically deceived. Proof that we're victims, not willing participants. The summit is in 3 days, Hae-won said. My recording devices are already in place. I've tested them. Audio and video quality is excellent. Everything transmits to our secure server in real time. What if they find the devices? Sophia asked. Then I'm dead, Hae-won said simply. But the evidence still exists. Still gets released automatically if I miss my weekly check-in. They can kill me, but they can't kill what I know. We need to approach the FBI before the summit, Laura argued. We need immunity deals in place before we hand over recordings that could incriminate us. Jean had been working on exactly that. I have contacts, former colleagues from when I prosecuted white-collar crime. I've reached out carefully, using hypotheticals. If someone discovered they'd been unknowingly involved in money laundering, what would be their best approach? And complete cooperation, voluntary disclosure, evidence of crimes they're exposing, not participating in. If we can prove we came forward as soon as we discovered the truth, if we can provide evidence of active conspiracy that the FBI can act on, we can negotiate full immunity. But we've known for 2 weeks, Sophia pointed out. We've been gathering evidence instead of immediately reporting. Does that count as soon as we discovered? We've been gathering evidence to protect ourselves and build a case strong enough to ensure immunity, Jean corrected. That's reasonable due diligence, not criminal conspiracy. We're preparing to be witnesses, not defendants. Hae-won pulled up a new file. This is what I'm proposing. After the summit, we immediately contact the FBI. All 4 of us, represented by Jean. We present preliminary evidence, enough to show we have something valuable. We negotiate immunity deals in writing. Then, and only then, we turn over the full evidence including the summit recordings. What if they won't give us immunity? Laura asked. Then we release everything to the media and let the court of public opinion destroy the Lee family even if we go down too, Hae-won said. But they'll deal. What we're offering is too valuable. A chance to dismantle an international drug trafficking organization, Jean mused. Take down a major syndicate, seize hundreds of millions in assets, make dozens of arrests across 3 countries. That's career-making for federal prosecutors. They'll deal. The plan was set. Hae-won would record the summit. The moment it ended, all 4 wives would contact FBI's organized crime unit through Jean's contacts. They'd present evidence, negotiate immunity, then hand over everything, including the recordings. What about Duyan? Sophia asked. When does he realize what we've done? Not until arrests start happening, Hae-won said. We coordinate with FBI to execute arrests simultaneously across all locations. Seoul, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Vancouver. By the time he understands what's happening, he's already in custody. He'll know we did this, Laura said. Good, Jeannie replied coldly. I want him to know exactly who destroyed him. 3 days later, the Lee family summit began. Laura, Jean, and Sophia were back in their respective cities, watching via secure video stream as Hae-won activated the recording devices. The summit took place in a conference room at the Lee family compound. Dae-young Lee presided at the head of the table, still commanding at 72. His 2 older sons, Min-ho and Sung-jin, sat to his right. Dae-young sat to his left, playing dutiful youngest son. Hae-won served tea, playing the traditional wife role she perfected over 12 years. The men barely acknowledged her presence. In their world, women were decorative, not threats, which made them perfect surveillance operatives. After serving, Hae-won retreated to the kitchen where she could monitor the audio feed on her phone while appearing to prepare refreshments. In San Francisco, Jean watched the video feed on her laptop. In Los Angeles, Laura pulled up the audio stream. In Vancouver, Sophia started transcribing in real time. Dae-young opened the meeting in Korean. Hae-won's system auto-translated in real time. This year has exceeded projections. American operations have grown 40%. European expansion proceeds ahead of schedule. Our Colombian partners express satisfaction with distribution efficiency and payment reliability. Minho presented financial reports, numbers that made the wives catch their breath. Hundreds of millions moving through their businesses, through shell companies, through the infrastructure Diyun had built using 4 unwitting women. Then Sungjin asked the question that changed everything. What about Mother? What was done with Mother? Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. Mother was handled appropriately, Diyun said dismissively. She died alone on a Los Angeles street, Sungjin pressed. That's appropriate handling. She made her choice when she threatened to expose us. She left us no option but to eliminate her as a liability. Dayung's voice was cold. Sentiment has no place in business. You know this. She was my mother, Sungjin said quietly. She was a threat. Threats are neutralized. This is basic operational security. Dayun shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Perhaps if we provided some support without bringing her back into the family, and risk her talking to authorities, media, anyone who'd listen? Dayung cut him off. She became homeless, mentally unstable, no credibility. Even if she talked, who would believe her? The plan worked perfectly. Laura felt sick listening. They deliberately destroyed Suni's life, made her homeless and discredited, ensured that if she tried to expose them, no one would take her seriously. The meeting continued. They discussed expansion plans for the American operations. Dayung praised Diyun's work establishing the wife-based infrastructure. The compartmentalization strategy is working excellently, Dayung said. 4 separate wives in different cities, none aware of the others, each running a legitimate business we can use for distribution and laundering. It's more resilient than family-based operations. If one wife becomes a problem, we replace her without disrupting the other 3. Any concerns about security? Minho asked. None currently, Duyun replied. They're isolated, controlled. Each believes she's my only wife. Each thinks she's running a successful business with my support. The psychological manipulation is stable. What happens when they've served their purpose? Duyun hesitated. We transition, phase them out, make them disappear cleanly. Like Mother. Exactly like Mother. They're useful now. Eventually, they become liabilities. When that happens, we handle it. Wives who profit from our business can't be trusted long-term. They know too much, even if they don't realize what they know. Dayung nodded approvingly. Good. You're learning. Sentiment is weakness. These women are tools. Tools serve a purpose. When they no longer serve that purpose, you dispose of them. The wives listened to this and understood with perfect clarity. They were all marked for Suni's fate. Duyun's family viewed them as temporary infrastructure to be discarded when convenient. But what the Lee family didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the tools they'd been using were recording every word, building a case, preparing to fight back. When the summit ended 3 hours later, Haewon had over 40 hours of high-quality audio and video showing the Lee family discussing their criminal operations in explicit detail, discussing money laundering, drug trafficking, and plans to eventually kill for women who'd unknowingly helped build their empire. Jin-ae immediately called her FBI contact. I have 4 witnesses ready to cooperate in a major organized crime investigation. International drug trafficking, money laundering, RICO violations. We need to meet immediately to discuss immunity agreements. The FBI agreed to meet the next morning. That night, the 4 wives held a video call. They looked at each other across screens and time zones. For women who'd been strangers 2 weeks ago, who'd been played as pawns, who'd discovered they were scheduled for disposal. Tomorrow we turn over everything, Jin-ae said. We become government witnesses. We destroy them. All of them, Haewon agreed. For Suni, Sophia added. And for us, Laura finished. Because we deserve to live. Not just survive. Actually live. They ended the call knowing that tomorrow, everything changed. Tomorrow they stopped being victims and became the evidence that would dismantle an empire. The FBI field office in Los Angeles was deliberately unremarkable, a mid-rise building in Westwood that could have housed accountants or insurance adjusters. Jin-ae, had chosen the LA office for their initial meeting because Laura lived there and could appear in person. Sophia and Hae-won would participate via secure video conference. At 9 a.m., Laura and Jin-ae sat across from Special Agent Rebecca Thornton, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and the kind of composure that came from 20 years chasing white-collar criminals who thought they were smarter than her. My clients are prepared to offer complete cooperation in a major international organized crime investigation, Jin-ae began. She'd slipped into lawyer mode, professional, precise, showing no weakness. In exchange, we're requesting full immunity from prosecution for any crimes they may have unknowingly committed while under the coercion and control of the subjects we're prepared to testify against. Agent Thornton leaned back. That's quite an opening. Why don't you tell me what we're talking about? For the next hour, Jin-ae laid out the case. For women married to the same man, businesses established with his investment that turned out to be fronts for money laundering and drug distribution. Years of unknowing participation in criminal enterprise. The discovery, the evidence gathered. We have financial records spanning 8 years, Jin-ae said. Shipping manifests showing drugs hidden in legitimate imports. Communication logs between the subjects discussing the conspiracy. And video recordings of a family summit where they explicitly discuss using my clients as unwitting infrastructure for criminal operations. She played a clip from the summit. Dae-young's voice, cold and clear. These women are tools. When tools no longer serve their purpose, you dispose of them. Agent Thornton's expression didn't change, but Laura saw her lean forward slightly. How much money are we talking about? Conservatively? $200 million laundered through our businesses over the past 8 years. Current operations generate approximately $40 million annually. And the drug trafficking component? Heroin and methamphetamine traffic from Southeast Asia through Korea to distribution points in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Vancouver. Our businesses serve as receiving points and money laundering facilities. We estimate several tons of product annually. Agent Thornton was quiet for a long moment. This is a significant case, but your clients are admitting to years of money laundering and drug trafficking. Under coercion, Jin-ae said firmly. My clients were systematically deceived. Each believed she was the only wife. Each thought she was running a legitimate business with her husband's support. None knew about the others until 2 weeks ago. None understood the criminal nature of the operations. 2 weeks is a long time. Why come forward now instead of immediately? Because we needed to protect ourselves. We needed evidence proving we're victims, not willing participants. We needed to document the scope of the conspiracy so we could offer something valuable enough to negotiate immunity. Laura added. We also needed proof that we were targeted and manipulated. The recordings from the family summit show them discussing us as tools and infrastructure. They planned to kill us eventually, just like they did Dae-young Lee's mother. That got Agent Thornton's attention. Explain. They told her about Soon-hee Lee, the homeless woman who died carrying photographs and a list of wives. The mother deliberately discarded by her own family, made homeless and discredited, so if she tried to expose them, no one would believe her. She was their first victim, Laura said. We were supposed to be next. She died trying to warn us. We owe it to her to see this through. Agent Thornton reviewed the preliminary evidence they'd provided. Financial documents, shipping manifests, transcripts from the summit recordings. This is substantial, she admitted. The kind of case that could dismantle a major international trafficking organization. But immunity isn't simple. The money you've made, the shipments you've signed for, the businesses you've run, that's not nothing. We're prepared to forfeit all assets, Jin-ae said. Every dollar we made, every property purchased, every investment. We don't want profit from crimes. We want our lives back. And you're willing to testify? Full cooperation? Depositions, grand jury testimony, trial if necessary. Everything, Laura confirmed. We'll testify against Dae-young Lee, his father, his brothers, every associate. We'll provide access to our business records, our communications, everything, in exchange for full immunity and witness protection if needed. Agent Thornton made a decision. I need to brief my supervisors and coordinate with international partners. This involves Korea and Canada. Give me 24 hours. In the meantime, I need you to do nothing different. Maintain your routines. Don't contact Duyun Lee or anyone in his family. Don't close your businesses or drain accounts. Act normal. Can you protect us during those 24 hours? Sophia asked via the video link. If they realize we've contacted FBI, they won't realize it yet. But yes, I'll have agents assigned to each of you. Discreet surveillance. If anything concerning happens, we move immediately. After the meeting, Laura and Jinae sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the FBI office, both too wired to go home. Do you think they'll deal? Laura asked. They'd be idiots not to. What we're offering is the kind of case agents dream about. Major RICO prosecution, international cooperation, massive asset seizures. They'll deal. And if they don't, then we release everything to the media and hope public pressure forces their hand. But they'll deal. Jinae sipped her coffee. How are you feeling? Terrified, relieved, angry. Laura laughed shakily. I keep thinking about Suni, about how she died trying to warn us, about how Diyun's own family made her homeless and left her to die. What kind of people do that? The kind we're about to destroy, Jinae said. And I cannot wait. The call from Agent Thornton came 16 hours later at 1 a.m. Los Angeles time. Laura was awake, too anxious to sleep. Jinae answered on the first ring. We have a deal, Thornton said. Full immunity for all 4 wives in exchange for complete cooperation and asset forfeiture. We're coordinating arrests across multiple jurisdictions to execute simultaneously. I need you all in protective custody by 6 a.m. Pack light. Anything you can't carry gets left behind. When do arrests happen? Jinae asked. Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. local time in each location. Seoul, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Vancouver. We're taking down the entire family plus known associates. Approximately 30 people. Laura felt her heart racing. Well, do you know we did this? Eventually. But by then he'll be in federal custody and you'll be in protection. He can't hurt you. At 5:47 a.m., Laura stood in her Brentwood home, the house Diyun had bought, the office he'd set up, the life he'd built for her that was never real, and packed a single suitcase. Clothes for a week. Photos of her family from before Diyun. The documentation of Suni Lee's death that the coroner had given her. Diyun was asleep in their bedroom. Laura hadn't woken him, hadn't said goodbye, just packed silently and waited for the FBI to arrive. At 5:58 a.m., she heard vehicles outside, saw through the window as FBI agents surrounded the house. Special Agent Thornton knocked quietly on the door. Laura opened it, suitcase in hand. Are you ready? Thornton asked. Laura looked back at the house one last time. 3 years of her life. 3 years of being played. 3 years of unknowingly committing crimes for a man who planned to eventually kill her. Yes, she said. I'm ready. At exactly 6 a.m., FBI agents entered the bedroom where Diyun was sleeping. Laura watched from the living room as they woke him, read his rights, handcuffed him while he was still processing what was happening. He saw her standing there with her suitcase and FBI agents. Understanding crashed over his face. Then rage. You, he breathed. You did this. We all did, Laura said calmly. All 4 of your wives. Together. You have no idea what you've. We know exactly what we've done. We've destroyed you. Your business. Your family's empire. All of it. And we did it using the evidence you gave us when you thought we were too compartmentalized to ever compare notes. Agents led Diyun away. He was still trying to argue, to threaten, to control. But for the first time in 12 years, he had no power. In San Francisco, Jinae watched as federal agents raided Lunar Gallery. She'd given them everything. Keys, codes, documentation of where evidence would be found. They seized computers, files, the art pieces that were actually stored drugs. A reporter appeared within the hour. Jinae gave a brief statement she and her lawyer had prepared. I was unaware my gallery was being used for criminal purposes. I discovered the truth 2 weeks ago and immediately contacted federal authorities. I'm cooperating fully and look forward to seeing justice served. In Vancouver, Sophia closed Golden Phoenix permanently. Posted a sign, closed by federal order. To my loyal customers, I'm sorry. The business you supported was built on lies I didn't know I was telling. Thank you for your patronage. I hope someday to open something real. In Seoul, Haewon held a press conference outside Lee Textiles. Flanked by Korean National Police and federal prosecutors, she read a statement. For 12 years I managed Lee Textiles believing it was a legitimate business. I was wrong. The company I ran was a front for international drug trafficking and money laundering. I discovered this truth 2 years ago and have been working with law enforcement to document the crimes and build a case against those responsible. She paused, looking directly into cameras broadcasting across South Korea. I'm here to tell other women who might be in similar situations. If something feels wrong, trust that instinct. If you feel controlled or manipulated, you probably are. And you have power. Even when they make you believe you're powerless, you can fight back. The press conference was broadcast internationally. Within hours, 2 other women came forward with similar stories. Married to men in organized crime, used as fronts, unaware until it was too late. The trial lasted 8 months. All 4 wives testified. They described their relationships, their businesses, their gradual realization that something was wrong. Showed evidence of systematic manipulation and control. Jin-Ae's testimony was clinical. She walked the jury through financial records, explaining exactly how money laundering worked, how she'd been set up to facilitate it without understanding. Sophia's testimony was emotional. She broke down describing the shame of learning her dream restaurant had been built on drug money and human suffering. Laura's testimony was angry. She described 3 years of marriage to a man who'd planned to kill her when she stopped being useful, who'd used her business to clean cartel money. Haewon's testimony was devastating. She had the most evidence, the longest history, the deepest understanding of the Lee family's operations. And she testified about Soon-hee, about Do-yoon's mother, abandoned and destroyed by her own family. She came to me begging for help, Haewon said, voice breaking. Showed me proof of everything. And I gave her money, but I didn't believe her fully. I thought she was disturbed. But she was telling the truth about everything. And she died trying to save us from the same fate. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Do-yoon Lee, 45 years federal prison. Dae-young Lee, life without parole. Min-ho Lee, 38 years. Sung-jin Lee, 35 years. Assets seized. Businesses dissolved. The empire built over 40 years was dismantled in 8 months of trials. So here's the thing about revenge. It's not satisfying when it's impulsive. It's satisfying when it's surgical. When you let your enemies talk themselves into corners while you gather evidence they don't even know exists. Do-yoon and his family spent 3 hours discussing how to dispose of their wives once they were no longer useful. What they didn't know, those same wives were watching, recording, and building a case that would destroy everything the Lee family built over 40 years. Sometimes the best weapon isn't a gun. It's for women who refuse to stay victims. Hit the subscribe button and don't go anywhere. We're almost done, but the ending matters. 1 year after the arrests, the 4 wives met in Los Angeles. Not as defendants or witnesses, not as wives of Do-yoon Lee, as themselves, as friends who'd survived something impossible together. They gathered at Laura's new apartment, smaller than the Brentwood house the FBI had seized, but paid for with money she'd actually earned. Jin-Ae flew in from San Francisco, where she'd reopened Lunar Gallery as a legitimate business showcasing emerging Korean-American artists. Sophia came from Vancouver, where she'd started a catering company that actually catered events, with transparent finances and no mysterious cash deposits. Haewon arrived from Seoul, where she'd resigned from Lee Textiles and started a nonprofit helping women escape abusive relationships and criminal exploitation. They gathered not to celebrate. There was nothing celebratory about what they'd been through, but to commemorate. Because today was the anniversary of Soon-hee Lee's death, and they'd promised to honor her memory. They drove together to the cemetery where Soon-hee was buried. Her grave had been unmarked when she died, another anonymous burial in Potter's Field. But the wives had changed that. The headstone was simple white marble with text in English and Korean. Soon-hee Lee, 1952 to 2024. She died warning others. She will not be forgotten. They placed flowers, white chrysanthemums, traditional for Korean mourning, stood in silence. For women who'd never met this woman, but owed her everything. She could have stayed quiet, Jeannie said. Could have accepted her fate. But she spent her final years trying to save strangers. She saved us, Sophia added. Even though it cost her everything. She gave us a choice, Laura said. Fight or accept. We chose to fight because she showed us it was possible. Haewon knelt, touched the headstone. In Korean tradition, we honor ancestors who protect their descendants. Suni wasn't blood family, but she protected us anyway. She's our ancestor now. We'll make sure her story is told. They'd already started. Haewon's nonprofit used Suni's story in awareness campaigns. Jin had commissioned a gallery exhibition about women who'd fought organized crime. Laura had written articles for domestic violence prevention organizations. Sophia had testified before Congress about how legitimate businesses get exploited by criminal organizations. Suni's warning had saved 4 women. Those 4 women were now working to save others. After the cemetery, they went to a small Korean restaurant Laura had discovered. They sat together, these 4 women whose lives had intersected through tragedy and choice, and talked about the future. Do you ever regret it? Sophia asked. Turning him in? Destroying everything? No, Jin said immediately. He would have killed us eventually. We saved our own lives. I regret marrying him, Laura admitted. I regret not seeing the signs sooner. But turning him in? That I'd do again in a heartbeat. My only regret is that Suni died before we could save her, Haewon said quietly. Everything else was survival. They were quiet for a moment. Then Jin raised her glass. To Suni. To the woman who warned us. To the mother who saved her son's victims even when her son had abandoned her. To Suni, the others echoed. They drank, and it felt like closure. Like permission to move forward. So what's next? Laura asked. For all of us. I'm expanding the nonprofit, Haewon said. Opening branches in other cities. Hiring survivors to help other survivors. Making sure Suni's story reaches women who need to hear it. I'm curating a traveling exhibition, Jin added. Stories of women who fought back against impossible odds. Art is activism. Making sure people understand how easy it is to become an unwitting participant in crime. I'm writing a cookbook, Sophia said with a small smile. Half recipes, half memoir. How I accidentally ran a drug front and lived to tell about it. My agent says it'll sell millions. Write it, Haewon encouraged. Tell the story. Make sure other women know the warning signs. Laura thought about her own next steps. I'm going back to school, getting my degree in criminal justice. Maybe I'll work with domestic violence victims, help them navigate legal systems. Use what I learned. That's perfect, Jin said. You'd be amazing at that. They talked for hours. About therapy and trauma and learning to trust again. About dating, Jin was seeing someone. Sophia was happily single. Laura wasn't ready. Haewon was considering it. About the small victories and ongoing struggles of rebuilding lives from scratch. We should do this every year, Laura said. Meet on Suni's anniversary. Remember, make sure we're still fighting. The others agreed immediately. And we should stay in touch between visits, Sophia added. Actually talk. Actually be friends. Are we friends? Jin asked, half joking. Or just trauma bonded? Can it be both? Laura smiled. We were forced together by a man who thought we'd never meet. Now we choose to stay connected. That seems like friendship to me. Haewon nodded. In Korea, we say same boat, same shore. We were in the same boat, Duyun's boat. Now we've reached the same shore, freedom. We're bonded by a shared journey and a shared destination. That's family. Family. The words settled over them. They'd lost the families they thought they had, marriages that were lies, lives that were infrastructure. But they'd gained each other. For women who understood what they'd survived because they'd survived it together. As they left the restaurant, stepping into Los Angeles sunshine, Laura felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope. Not the kind that ignores danger or pretends trauma doesn't leave scars. But I earned hope. The kind that comes from surviving the worst and choosing to build something better. Same time next year, she asked. Same time, the others confirmed. They hugged goodbye. Real hugs, the kind that acknowledged shared pain and celebrated shared strength. Then they went their separate ways, back to Seoul and San Francisco and Vancouver and Los Angeles. back to the lives they were rebuilding from ashes. And somewhere, in a cemetery in Los Angeles, white chrysanthemums marked a grave that would never be forgotten. Because Suni Lee had died warning others, and the women she'd tried to save had made sure her death meant something. They'd made sure that when tools get tired of being used, they don't just break. They weaponize. The end. Look, here's what I need you to understand. Suni Lee died on a sidewalk, clutching photographs of women she'd never met, trying with her last breath to warn them about her own son. And those 4 women, Laura, Jinae, Sophia, and Hae-won, turned her final act of courage into a weapon that destroyed a 40-year criminal empire. That's not just a story. That's proof that the people who underestimate you, who use you, who think you'll stay quiet and compliant, they're making the biggest mistake of their lives. So if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that you're stronger than whoever's trying to control you, do me one favor. Subscribe. Because stories about women who were supposed to disappear but chose to fight back instead, those stories need to be told. Loudly. Repeatedly. Until every person who's ever been underestimated understands that being used doesn't make you weak, it makes you dangerous. Hit that button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember Suni's name. She deserves that much. We all do.